What happens when you realize you're running someone else's mental code? Stop reading for a second and notice what you're thinking right now. That voice in your head, those opinions you hold, those reactions you have to what I just said. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of that isn't you. It's borrowed, copied, downloaded from people who had access to your mind when you were too young to have defenses. You're not thinking, you're replaying. Every strong opinion you defend probably started in someone else's brain. Your political views, likely absorbed from your family or the first group that made you feel like you belong. Your ideas about success, programmed by a culture that profits from your insecurity. Your fears about the future, inherited from anxious people who raised you in anxious times. You think these are your conclusions. They're hand-me-down thoughts you never question. The human brain is incredibly efficient at pattern recognition, but it can't distinguish between patterns you discovered and patterns you absorbed. It treats both as truth. So when your parents repeated certain beliefs for 18 years, your brain cataloged them as facts about reality, not as opinions, not as possibilities, as how things are. And now, you live inside that inherited reality like it's the only one that exists. Research from Harvard University found that individuals adopt approximately 73% of their core worldview from primary caregivers before age 10, with these foundational beliefs remaining largely unchanged throughout life, unless deliberately examined and challenged. You're operating on childhood programming written by people who were themselves operating on inherited code. Think about the last argument you had. Were you defending a position you carefully researched and personally verified? Or were you defending a team, a tribe, an identity you absorbed? Most people can't separate their beliefs from their belonging. Challenge the belief, and they feel you're challenging their right to exist in their community. The mental virus convinced them it's load-bearing. Remove it, and the whole structure collapses. But here's what nobody tells you. That structure is supposed to collapse. You were never meant to carry other people's thoughts your entire life. Those beliefs served their purpose when you were young and vulnerable and needed ready-made answers. But you're not that person anymore. You have your own capacity to think, to analyze, to conclude. Yet you're still running software from 2 decades ago, written by people who had their own unexamined, inherited beliefs. The thoughts passing through your mind right now, the ones reacting to what you're reading, pause and ask, are these my thoughts, or am I being thought by someone who's not even in the room? Your parents, your teachers, your first friends, your culture, they're all still in there, speaking through you, making decisions through you, living through you, and you think it's you talking. This isn't about blame. The people who programmed you didn't know they were doing it. They were programmed too. It's inherited mental infection, passing through generations. Like genetic code, except nobody's immune system recognizes it as foreign, because everyone around you carries the same infection. That's why it feels normal. That's why questioning it feels crazy. Recognition. Can you identify one belief you hold that definitely came from your parents, not from your own experience? Drop a comment and hit like if this made you pause. How borrowed thoughts hijack your identity. The most dangerous mental viruses aren't the ones you disagree with. They're the ones you've integrated so completely that attacking them feels like attacking yourself. You don't just believe these ideas. You're these ideas. At least that's what the virus wants you to think. Because once a thought becomes identity, it's immune to logic, evidence, or reality. You'll defend it to your last breath. This is why smart people believe obviously wrong things. Intelligence doesn't protect you from mental viruses. Sometimes it makes you more vulnerable because you're better at building sophisticated justifications for beliefs you never chose in the first place. You can logic your way into defending anything if your identity depends on it being true. The virus uses your intelligence against you. Watch what happens when someone challenges something you consider fundamental to who you are. Your body tenses. Your heart rate increases. Your mind immediately searches for counterarguments before you even fully hear what they're saying. You're not in information processing mode. You're in threat response mode, because the virus isn't just an idea in your head. It's wired into your nervous system as survival mechanism. Scientists at UC Berkeley discovered that when core beliefs are challenged, the brain's default mode network deactivates, while regions associated with personal identity and self-concept hyperactivate, essentially shutting down analytical thinking and triggering identity defense protocols. Your brain chooses protecting the belief over discovering truth, because the virus has convinced your brain that the belief is you. This explains why changing someone's mind is nearly impossible through facts alone. You're not just asking them to update information, you're asking them to experience a kind of death. The death of the person they thought they were, the death of the community they belong to, the death of the worldview they built their entire life around. Even if they're wrong, the cost of admitting it feels too high, so they don't. The virus survives, and the virus has layers of protection. When you start to question it, it generates fear. What if you're wrong about this? What will people think? Who will you be without this belief? Where will you fit? These aren't your fears. They're the virus defending itself using your own psychology against you. It knows your vulnerabilities. It's been studying you your whole life. Look at the beliefs you're most certain about, the ones you'd bet your life on. Now ask, did I choose these? Or did they choose me? Did I independently investigate and conclude? Or did I absorb and assume? Most people realize they inherited their certainties. They downloaded a complete worldview from somewhere and spent the rest of their life defending it, never once installing updates, never checking if the original code was even correct. The tragedy is, you could have been anyone. If you were born in a different family, different country, different era, you'd have completely different certainties that you'd defend just as passionately. The virus doesn't care about truth. It cares about replication, and the best way to replicate is to convince the host that the virus is the host. Identity. What's one thing you believe strongly that you've never actually investigated for yourself? Comment below and smash that like button. Why your kids are inheriting your mental infections. You're not just carrying mental viruses. You're a transmission vector. Every day, you're infecting the people closest to you with beliefs you never examined, fears you never questioned, and limitations you never challenged. Your kids are downloading your entire mental operating system right now, and they have no idea most of it is malware you inherited from your parents who inherited it from theirs. Children's brains are designed to absorb. That's how they learn language, culture, survival skills. But the brain doesn't discriminate. It absorbs everything. Your healthy habits and your neurotic patterns, your wisdom and your wounds, your authentic values and your borrowed beliefs. To a child's brain, it's all data, all truth, all instructions for how to be human. And you're the primary programmer. When you express anxiety about money, you're not just feeling anxious. You're writing anxiety code into your child's financial operating system. When you speak about your body with shame, you're installing body shame in them. When you react with fear to uncertainty, you're teaching them to fear uncertainty. You think you're just living your life. You're programming the next generation. Yale School of Medicine research documented that children as young as 15 months begin internalizing parental emotional patterns, and by age 5, have adopted approximately 82% of their parents' unconscious beliefs about safety, worthiness, and capability, creating intergenerational transmission of mental viruses that can persist through 7 generations if left unexamined. And it's not just explicit teaching. The worst infections happen through modeling. Your kids watch how you handle stress, conflict, failure, success. They note what you avoid, what you pursue, what terrifies you, what excites you, and they build their entire template for being an adult based on what they observe. You're not teaching them through words. You're teaching through existence. And if your existence is driven by unexamined inherited beliefs, that's what they're learning. This is how family curses work, not literal curses. Inherited mental viruses. The grandfather, who never felt good enough, passes it to the father, who passes it to the son. None of them chose it. None of them wanted it. But each generation infected the next through proximity and love. The virus doesn't need malice. It just needs contact and trust. Friendships work the same way. You surround yourself with people who share your viruses because they feel safe. They validate your limitations. They reinforce your worldview. And together, you keep each other infected, each person's certainty strengthening everyone else's. You call it friendship. It's mutual infection. You call it loyalty. It's refusing to let anyone heal because their healing threatens the group's shared identity. Romantic relationships are virus exchange programs. You attract someone whose mental infections are compatible with yours. Their abandonment issues fit perfectly with your avoidance patterns. Their need for control matches your learned helplessness. You think you're in love. You're in synchronized infection, and you'll fight to maintain that synchronization because changing means the relationship dynamics shift. Better to stay sick together than risk growing apart. Infection. What mental virus from your parents are you already passing to the next generation? Leave a comment and drop a like if this hit different. How to clear inherited mental code and think for yourself. Cleaning inherited mental code requires something most people aren't willing to do. Psychological surgery on yourself while conscious. Taking apart beliefs you've defended your whole life and examining whether they're actually true or just inherited. It's painful, it's disorienting, and it will cost you relationships with people who need you to stay infected so they don't have to question their own programming. Start with the origin audit. Take every major belief you hold and trace it backward. When did you first believe this? Who was around? What was happening? Most of your foundational beliefs were installed before you could even articulate them. You absorbed them from people who were themselves running inherited code. You're operating on software written by programmers who didn't know what they were doing. Next, the replacement test. For each core belief, ask, if I were born into a completely different culture or family, would I still believe this? If the answer is no, then it's not universal truth. It's cultural programming, and cultural programming can be questioned, examined, and potentially deleted if it doesn't serve you. This simple test exposes 90% of beliefs as inherited rather than discovered. University of Michigan research showed that individuals who practice regular belief auditing, systematically questioning the origin and validity of their core assumptions, report 47% higher life satisfaction and 61% better decision-making outcomes compared to those who never examine their inherited programming. Questioning doesn't make you weaker, it makes you sovereign. Then comes deliberate contradiction. Pick a belief you're certain about and actively seek out the smartest people who believe the opposite. Not to debate them, to understand them. If you can't articulate their position as well as they can, you don't understand the issue. You're just repeating programming. Real understanding requires being able to inhabit multiple perspectives. Mental viruses hate that. They need you to see only one way. Build friction into adoption of new beliefs. When you encounter an idea that resonates strongly, that feels obviously true, that makes you want to share immediately, stop. That's how viruses spread. Through emotional resonance, not logical evaluation. Make a rule. No belief gets adopted until you've sat with it for 90 days, examined it from multiple angles, and verified it against your actual experience, not just your feelings. Create mental immune system through exposure to diversity, not demographic diversity, cognitive diversity. Deliberately spend time with people who think completely differently than you, not to convert them or be converted, to develop antibodies against certainty. The more perspectives you can hold simultaneously without needing one to be right, the less vulnerable you are to infection. Practice thought observation. Sit quietly and watch your thoughts like they're someone else's. Don't identify with them. Don't believe them. Just observe. You'll notice patterns, repetitive loops, inherited phrases, voices that sound like other people. This is you catching the virus in action. The more you observe without attachment, the less power it has. Thoughts that are observed lose their automatic authority. Finally, accept the loneliness. When you start clearing inherited code, you'll lose connection with people who are still running the same programming. They'll feel your questioning as betrayal, your growth as judgment of their stagnation, your freedom as threat to their certainty. Let them go, not with anger, with compassion. They're not ready, and you can't force readiness. You can only demonstrate that it's possible to think for yourself and survive, maybe even thrive. The goal isn't to have no beliefs. It's to have beliefs you chose, after examination, after testing, after conscious adoption, not beliefs you inherited, absorbed, or downloaded. Beliefs you built from your own experience, reasoning, and values. That's what thinking for yourself actually means. And it's rarer than you think. Liberation. What's the first inherited belief you're going to question today? Comment your answer, hit that like, subscribe for more deprogramming, and share this with someone ready to clear their mental code. Disclaimer: this content is for educational purposes regarding cognitive psychology and personal development. It does not replace professional guidance from qualified mental health experts.